When you think about those massive high-tech ships crossing our oceans, you probably picture cutting-edge technology. But what if I told you they were designed for operators who don't even exist? Today we're getting into a really critical issue in modern shipping, this dangerous gap between how ships are designed and the very real, very human limits of the crew who run them.
And this quote, man, it just says it all, doesn't it? It perfectly captures the heart of the problem. You've got this fundamental conflict where we put this incredible technology into the hands of people who, well, get tired and make mistakes, just like the rest of us.
Okay, so let's break this down. On one side, you have this mythical operator that seems to only exist in design documents. A person who is always alert, never loses focus, a machine, basically. But the reality? The reality is the crew member on the other side, a very mortal person, standing on the bridge at 3 in the morning after a grueling 12-hour watch. The whole system is built for the superhuman, but it's the real person who has to somehow make it all work.
And that really gets us to the main issue here, something you could call fatigue by design. It's this idea that the problem goes so much deeper than just making sure someone gets a certain number of hours off the clock.
Now, I know what you're thinking. This is the first question that always comes up. The industry has rules, right? There are regulations about rest hours, so shouldn't that fix the problem? Well, the hard truth is that paperwork solutions just don't equal actual rest, Ticking a box on a form doesn't magically recharge the brain of an officer who's been wrestling with a poorly designed system for their entire shift. Because real human fatigue, it's way more complicated than what you can put on a timesheet.
See, fatigue isn't just about being sleepy. It's literally built into the ship's environment. Think about where crews have to sleep. A lot of the time, it's right next to the constant hum and vibration of heavy machinery. Or think about what they're asked to do, like manually punching in data across multiple systems that don't even talk to each other. And the big one, how the ship systems themselves are designed, from confusing bridge layouts to just a ridiculous number of alarms.
And that brings us to this really important concept, alarm fatigue. This is a well-known thing in other high-stakes jobs, like aviation or medicine. If you're just bombarded with constant, non-stop alerts, most of which aren't critical, your brain does what brains do. It starts to tune them out. And the danger there is pretty obvious. You might just tune out the one alarm that's actually signaling a real emergency.
And these examples are just perfect. They're so vivid. You've got the chiropractor's bridge, where all the screens are set up for a super tall officer, forcing everyone else to basically live with neck pain. Or the alarm symphony, where the important alerts just get drowned out by all the noise. You've got cabins right next to engine rooms, as if just handing someone earplugs is a real fatigue strategy. And oh yeah, bridge displays you literally can't read in direct sunlight. Great for navigation, right?
So what happens when all these little design flaws start to stack up? Well, they stop being minor annoyances. They start to have really serious, high-stakes consequences. And this is the key takeaway. Every single one of those issues we just talked about, it's a risk multiplier. Each one quietly, systematically pushes a tired human operator a little bit closer to making a mistake.
And sure enough, when you dig into accident investigation reports, fatigue is almost always there, kind of lurking in the shadows. It's a contributing factor in groundings, collisions, critical navigation errors, you name it. But here's the thing. It often doesn't get the blame, because it's so much easier to point the finger at the operator than it is to criticize the design philosophy of the entire ship.
This quote just hits the nail on the head. A system that demands perfection from an imperfect human is, by its very definition, a flawed system. It's really not a question of if it's going to fail, it's just a question of when.
So you have to ask yourself, why is this still such a huge problem in shipping? Well, it really helps to see how it stacks up against other industries where the stakes are just as high.
Just look at this comparison. In aviation and defense, thinking about human factors is part of the process from day one. Cockpits, controls, they're meticulously built around the known limits of human beings because they get it. They know fatigue destroys performance. But in commercial shipping, all too often, it feels like an optional extra, something you bolt on after the ship is already built.
Okay, so it might sound a little bleak, but here's the good news. This is a solvable problem. We don't need to invent some brand new technology. It just requires a fundamental shift in how we think about design.
And the steps forward are actually pretty straightforward, really just common sense. First, design bridges for real people, not for 6'4" superhumans. Second, use simulation to catch these ergonomic problems before you even start cutting steel. Then, create smarter alarm systems that only tell you what's truly critical.
And finally, design sleeping quarters that are actually, designed for sleeping.
Because at the end of the day, it all comes down to this one simple, undeniable truth. It's just part of being human. You can't train it away, you can't regulate it away, it just is.
And that is the ultimate point here. We can't eliminate human error, nobody can, but what we can do is design systems that are resilient to it. Good human-centered design, that's your safety net. It anticipates the mistake, and it makes sure that when that mistake eventually happens, it doesn't spiral into a catastrophe.
So I'll just leave you with this final thought. As long as we keep building these incredibly complex machines for an operator who doesn't actually exist, can we really act surprised when very tired, very mortal humans get it wrong sometimes? I think the answer is pretty obvious.